In a shadowy forge, the sound of footsteps echoes. A young man stands there with a look of pure exhaustion on his face. Before him lies a sword that emits a golden glow as intense as the sun itself. The young man's eyes fill with an overwhelming fury. He swings in the scorching forge and opens his mouth. Without a moment's hesitation, the kid chomps down on the sword with all his might. To understand the situation, the story rewinds a bit. Standing in front of a massive painting, little Arhin's father tells him to pay close attention because there is something important he needs to remember. He explains that although they currently live far from the capital, their family was incredibly powerful 200 years ago. Their ancestors were called gods of war and were admired by all as righteous guardians. The family was chosen by the sword, and because of that it produced powerful swordmasters for generations. For this reason, everyone treated them with immense respect, and they were known as the Invincible Protectors. That painting depicts the image of the mighty ancestor of the caravan family. His father places a hand on Arhin's shoulder and tells the boy that he will be the next head of the caravan family. He insists that Arhin must always be proud of the blood of steel that runs through his veins. His father mentions that their mission is to restore the great name of their family. By restoring their family name, they would rise again as the protectors of this land. Time passes and now reveals a vast wheat field. Arhin reflects on the heroic stories his father used to tell him, but he has come to the conclusion that it was all just a load of bull. He believes it is common for fallen nobles to cling to past glories. He figures that if the stories were true, they wouldn't be living in this poor village as landlords. He thinks they definitely wouldn't be spending their time doing farm work with the tenants every day. As he chats with the villagers, Arhin remains lost in thought. He thinks there were way too many plot holes in his father's stories. The first inconsistency is the family's founder, the idolized figure in the portrait. He notes that the man doesn't look like anyone in the family, and his sword is way too perfect to be that old. The most damning evidence is that not a single history book in the entire kingdom mentions the name of his alleged ancestor, Liam Caravan. Arhin observes that he couldn't find it mentioned even once. Considering all of this, Arhin concludes it is all just a tall tale made up to give descendants something to be proud of. One of the villagers notices Arhin spacing out and asks why he is standing there zoning out. The villager Kun calls him over for a snack break before all the warm bread is gone. Arhin yells his head off and tells them to wait up. He demands that they save some food for him. Even though his family isn't grand anymore, he feels happy living this quiet life. Everyone who welcomes him is right there with him. He loves this place where he can live with them. He runs towards his people. He thinks that this is the caravan he truly wants. But suddenly, everything changed in a single day. The peaceful village turned into a full-blown massacre. Arhin stands there watching his family and his peaceful life fade away. Scarlet drops stain the wheat they had worked so hard to harvest. Just like that, his peace was shattered. Moments before it all happened, he was saying goodbye to the villagers. He told them he was heading to the market in the neighboring town. He said he was thinking of picking up anything they needed while he was there. He even promised to bring back apples for Kun, who had been grumbling about not having seen any fruit. Arhin also remembers Marino's youngest daughter's birthday is coming up soon, so he promises to buy a doll for her if he sees one. Arhin gives a little wink and says he knows everything because he is going to be the next lord around here. Then he says his goodbyes and rides off on his horse as the villagers wave to him. Arhin continues on his way with a smile on his face while everyone wishes him a safe trip. The sun sets on the horizon and paints the wheat fields in a peaceful golden light. Watching him leave, the villagers comment on how there is no one quite like the young master. Kun gets everyone's attention and tells them to finish the rest of their work before it gets too late. But out of nowhere, something pierces right through Kun's head in the middle of his sentence. At that terrible moment, the slaughter began. The blood of his friend splatters across the villagers' faces and leaves everyone in shock. In the blink of an eye, Marino is also struck down. The once peaceful wheat field is now completely stained. A long-haired man appears and declares that this land must be erased. The other villagers look at the man with pure terror in their eyes. Trembling with fear, one of the elders asks who this mysterious man is. The invader stands there silently holding his blade. With his mysterious voice, he announces again that this land will be erased. With a single swift motion, he attacks the villagers who can only cry as their lives are torn away. The blood of innocent friends and family sprays everywhere. After such a brutal act, that cruel man leaves without a hint of remorse. A few hours later under the moonlight, Arhin arrives. Without a word, he drops the apples and the doll he had promised his friends. Standing there breaking out in a cold sweat, Arhin cannot say a single word. Staring at the bodies of everyone, he wonders why they are all dead. It is then that a mysterious person appears behind him while he stands paralyzed. But the one who hugs him is his butler. The old man sobs as he covers Arhin's eyes to shield him from the horrific scene. Arhin calls out for his butler, not understanding the situation. In disbelief, Arhin asks his butler with a trembling voice if he's seeing things. Then the reality of it all hits him and Arhin breaks down in tears. He cries out for the villagers. Still crying, his butler explains that the mysterious man came saying that the caravans should be erased. It took him just 10 minutes to destroy everything. In the blink of an eye, a single man ended the lives of everyone Arhin loved. The butler remembers that man who appeared without warning. Wielding his blade with cold indifference, he took the lives of half the villagers. The man destroyed everything with his sword and left the village in ruins. He just stood there amidst the destruction he himself had caused. The killer just kept repeating with an indifferent expression that he was just following orders. Just like that, half of the caravan family fell and was erased without a trace. It was all caused by a single disaster, a swordmaster. Arhin and his butler walked to the caravan family mansion. Inside the house, Arhin and the butler see the bodies of the servants scattered across the floor. Arhin walks with empty steps. His eyes lost their light that day. It was when he saw all his innocent villagers, their lives lost for nothing. Arhin falls into despair and screams in pain as he pulls at his hair, crying. While he is weeping, on the verge of being consumed by madness, Arhin's mother calls out to him. In shock, Arhin sees his mother running toward him, her face streaked with tears. She hugs him desperately as if he were the only hope she had left. Crying, the woman gives thanks that her son is safe in this terrible moment. Arhin returns the hug, still not understanding what is happening. For a moment, the warmth of his mother's hug gives him a brief sense of relief. While hugging his mother, he sees his father on his knees. His father kneels with an expression of terror and madness. Asking why this had happened, the stain on the window shows that this family's tragedy was just beginning. The swordmaster who decimated the village did not harm his parents, but left a warning. The story goes back a little further to understand the warning. Wounded and defeated, Arhin's father stood beside his wife. Powerless, the invader warned that if they wanted to live, they had to take everyone and leave within a month. Arhin's father cried while holding his broken sword. He asked why this was happening to them. In a cry of pain, he questioned what sin they had committed to deserve such suffering. Consumed by despair, he kept asking why, but the cruel assassin simply left without a word. But then the man stopped and let out a small sigh. The mysterious man just repeated that he was simply following orders. After leaving those incomprehensible words behind, he just walked away. With that, the surviving villagers began to leave the village one by one. Terrified, they all left the village as fast as they could to save their lives. This was the only way to save themselves, but for Arhin's family, that choice was not an option. Crushed by his responsibility and powerlessness, Arhin's father began to lose his mind and hurt himself against the wall. He claimed he is the great knight who hunts nightmares. He said it was his duty to defeat the evil that was coming and swore to the heavens that he would never give up. Because of her husband's descent into madness, Arhin's mother would not give up and went to speak with Arhin. She explains that she had the butler prepare a carriage and tells Arhin to flee far away to survive. Desperate, Arhin begs for his mother to go with him and his father. The woman explains that his father cannot leave because he will fight as the Lord of Caravan until the very end. She declares that as his partner, she will stay by his side until the last moment. Arhin cries and begs his mother not to do this. He asks them to go together. It is then that she reveals the stories about their ancestors were not true. The legends of righteous and invincible guardians were just a story full of lies. With a serious look, Arhin's mother asks her son to make her a promise. She makes the boy promise that he will never pick up a sword again and that he will survive at any cost. Stroking his face and wiping his tears, she asks him to forget about revenge and just live for himself. At that exact moment, the butler arrives and announces that the carriage is ready. The woman then asks the butler to take care of Arhin and take him as far away as possible. The butler grabs the boy, who screams in desperation, saying he cannot do this to his mother. With a sad but determined look, the woman prepares for her final goodbye to her son. As the butler drags him away, Arhin screams desperately for his mother. He reaches out his hand trying to get to her, but she just stays behind, watching with a sad smile. Her last words to him are that she loves him. The scene then returns to the mansion where the boy's parents were left behind. Inside, Arhin's father was completely unhinged amidst the books. The man was out of his mind and wounded in the chaos of his library. Bleeding and exhausted, the lord of the caravan family seemed to have lost all hope. His wife hugs him from behind and asks him to stop suffering alone, at least at the end. She says tenderly that she will stay by his side until the very end. Meanwhile, in the carriage, the butler takes Arhin far away from that place. He thinks that the young master needs to get over this because the invader is a disaster, a natural calamity like a hurricane against which they could do nothing. For that reason, he asks the boy to accept the tragedy and forget so he can live on. The butler is sure his parents would have wanted him to move forward. But suddenly he is startled when he realizes the young master is no longer there. Arhin leaps from the carriage with a clenched fist. Full of determination, he runs back because he cannot go alone and leave his parents behind. Arhin refuses to run away alone and abandon his family like that. Screaming, he reaffirms his decision and runs as fast as he can back to the mansion. He thinks that a swordmaster is still human and can be defeated. During the last month, he even managed to get a deadly poison to use in his plan. He believes that if he can hit the enemy with the poison, he can save his parents. But upon arriving at the mansion, he stops dead in his tracks, completely horrified by the scene before him. His eyes widen in pure shock as he sees the horrible scene unfolding. His father's head is hanging in front of the mansion like a warning. His blood slowly drips down and stains the caravan family symbol. The swordmaster calls him a fool for returning to certain doom. With a mocking tone, he asks if the boy really came back to get himself finished off. The invader gets annoyed, saying he showed mercy by letting him go. Arhan lets out a scream of pure agony and hatred when he sees his mother lying lifeless on the ground. His mother lays at the assassin's feet. Her face is pale with a trickle of blood running from her mouth. Consumed by fury, Arhan aims his crossbow and swears he will kill him. The swordmaster just stares at him with a cold, emotionless gaze. Without a second of hesitation, Arhan fires the poisoned arrow. The arrow flies at high speed toward the white-haired man. The weapon he had so carefully prepared was his only hope. But his plan fails miserably, and now he is on his knees and disarmed. The swordmaster grabs Arhan by the neck with force and lifts him into the air. He shows the vial of poison and comments that the boy has not even turned 18. Because of that, he tells Arhan to consider himself lucky because he is going to spare his life. Grabbing his face, the man warns that no trace of the caravan family will remain. He states that if he tries to continue the bloodline, the assassin will find him again. He declares that the caravan family will simply disappear. And with that, he leaves the boy and walks away. Arhan falls to his knees on the ground, completely broken and hopeless. Looking at his mother's body, he feels pathetic for not having done anything. Kneeling, he hugs her body, crying desperately from pain and guilt. That day he realized he had lost everything he loved all at once, or so he thought until his ancestor's sword shone with a blue light. Suddenly, Arhan is transported back to his childhood looking at something bright. A mysterious voice calls his name and tells him to show some respect. The light comes directly from his ancestor's portrait and completely envelops him. The figure of Liam Caravan, the family's founder, appears, calling him descendant. A year has passed since Arhan buried them all in one corner of the estate. In that time, he prepared for his revenge. The target is the pinnacle, currently hailed as the strongest sword on the continent. He is a guardian who protects the kingdom's peace and a righteous sentinel who eradicates evil. A superhuman with the most brilliant talent, even among swordmasters. His name is Carlos, wielder of the 10 swords. It was the name and fame of the man who took everything from Arhan. Everything was a question. He wonders why he killed his family and who is behind all of this. Arhan wonders what secrets Caravan even holds. However, one thing is clear. The lives of all the Caravan members who died in vain will never return. Arhan asks himself what this is. He questions if these unsolved mysteries have driven him to madness. Something unbelievable has appeared before him. The sword on the wall glows with blue light. A voice commands Arhan Caravan to show some respect. The voice calls him his descendant. A spirit forms from the light. Arhan thinks that he thought it was all a lie, but there he was, his ancestor from the legends and the portrait. Rain falls outside. Arhan notes that he has heard of something like this before. He knows that for some reason, those who have suffered severe mental shock often experience hallucinations. However, he cannot simply dismiss what is in front of him. Liam Caravan senses his wavering. He asks if Arhan is afraid he has truly gone mad or if it is that an ancestor he dismissed as fantasy has appeared before him, leaving him utterly stunned. Arhan trembles and asks if this spirit is truly the founder of their family. The figure confirms he is the strongest swordmaster in history, Liam Caravan. Arhan asks that if he is really the person from his father's heroic tales, then why is he only appearing before him now? He screams, demanding to know why he appears now after all this time. Liam explains that it is because he needed to test Arhan for himself. He states that revenge is an ordeal that shouldn't even be started unless one is prepared to give up everything. And so, for the past year, Liam has been watching him every single day. Liam describes Arhan's pathetic, hopeless talent which the boy himself must recognize. He observed his obsession to never let go of his sword, not even for a single day, and never, not even for a moment, has his will wavered. Liam says the answer to why he has only appeared now is simple. It is because the hatred in Arhan's eyes has finally reached the depth he desired, and also because his own patience has reached its limit. Liam declares that the murderous intent within him wants to tear the one who brutally slaughtered his descendants and the people of his land to pieces. Liam states that throughout the history of this continent, there is a fact that has never been disproven. Only a swordmaster can kill a swordmaster. He tells Arhan that he knows this as well, which is why he swings his sword with such stubbornness, vowing revenge. But if Arhan is on his own, he could train for a lifetime and never reach him. Liam explains that a swordmaster is a transcendent existence, beyond the limits of humanity. It is a level of skill that even so-called geniuses can never hope to reach. And even among swordmasters, that man is a transcendent being who stands far above the rest. Even in Liam's time, during the Age of War, there were only a handful of warriors as skilled as him. Liam confirms that no one in this generation can kill him, and as time passes, he will become even greater. Arhan admits he knows full well how vast the gap between them is. He asks if Liam is saying that it is beyond difficult or that it is impossible. He asks if he just has to stand by and watch the bastard who took everything from him become a hero. Arhan asks if he is once again powerless. Liam interrupts, stating that from this moment on, things will be different. He declares he is going to help him so that Arhan can become a sharper and stronger blade than him. As a member of Caravan, he can judge that murderer. There is only one path that a Caravan can take. Liam orders him to eat his sword, descendant of the steel-blooded. The scene shifts to the forge. Arhan stands before the furnace. Liam explains that the Caravan bloodline is a mix of human and dwarven blood. It all began with him, a half-dwarf. The physical traits of the dwarves may not be apparent, but within their blood is a special ability that is passed down to their descendants. That ability is the power to consume swords. By doing so, you make the memories and skills of the wielder your own. Liam reveals that this is how the Caravan family has produced swordmasters for generation after generation. It is the source of their power that made them such a great family. Arhin thinks inheriting power by eating swords sounds crazy. He knows it is well known that dwarves are friends of iron and fire, but he has never heard of such a bizarre ability. It all seems so absurd to him. These stories only confuse him. However, the truth can only be proven by results. Arhin states he does not have the luxury to hesitate. He yells at Liam to tell him how to consume the sword. Liam says the method is simple. He instructs Arhin to just heat the sword until the blade is soft enough and then swallow it. Arhin holds the glowing red blade. He thinks maybe he is trapped in a nightmare or he has gone mad. Maybe he is being led astray by a mere phantom. But even so, if there is even a sliver of a chance. Arhin screams that he will do it. He bites down hard on the molten steel. The sword shatters in his teeth. Arhin gags and coughs as the heat enters him. He feels the searing pain in his throat and chest. He screams in agony as the fire burns him from the inside. As he writhes on the ground, the memories of the massacre flood his mind. He remembers the dead bodies of his people. He remembers his mother's lifeless face. He remembers the swordmaster's voice telling him to remember. Arhin crushes the hilt of the sword in his hand with bloodshot eyes. He vows that even if it costs him his life, he will become one. He screams that he will become a swordmaster to kill him. It all starts on a quiet, sunny morning in a simple country house. Suddenly, Arhin wakes up screaming as if he had a horrible nightmare. With a racing heart, Arhin realizes he is alive and takes a deep breath. He is confused because he felt the pain of swallowing hot iron, but his body is without a single scratch. He notes that he can still vividly recall the pain of chewing and swallowing that sword. He wonders if the events of the previous day were just a dream. But the proof that it was all real is on the floor, as the hilt of the sword is still there. At that moment, a mysterious voice speaks, observing that while Arhin's mental fortitude is commendable, his body is hopelessly weak. Immediately after, the spirit of an old man appears, stating that even among his ancestors, some couldn't withstand the searing pain and more than a few gave up. Liam Caravan asks if Arhin finally believes his story now. He states that all the legends about the caravans his father told him are true, and he is no mere hallucination. Faced with the situation, the young man kneels. He formally introduces himself as Arhin Caravan and greets the spirit as the progenitor. The old man then tells Arhin to call him master from now on. He explains that all those who have received his teachings have done so. Arhin accepts and says he understands master. Still recovering, Arhin asks if this means he has inherited his great power, like his father said. He remembers Liam's words from last night about how he could gain power simply by consuming swords. Kneeling in front of Liam, Arhin admits he doesn't feel like much has changed. With a serious expression, Liam reveals that there has been a bit of a problem. He clarifies that it is a problem on Arhin's part, not his. Arhin asks what he means. Liam explains that his original plan was to have Arhin eat his beloved sword and raise him to the level of a swordmaster. However, the caravan bloodline has weakened greatly over the generations. While Arhin still inherited the ability to consume swords, the ability to digest a sword's power contained within seems to have weakened considerably. Liam summarizes the situation by stating that in Arhin's current state, it is impossible for him to fully digest the essence of that sword. Arhin remains there on his knees and says he sees. To his ancestors' surprise, Arhin simply accepts the situation. Liam asks if that is all he has to say. Arhin replies that he was already aware of his body's weakness. Although he is disappointed with the result, he says he is simply grateful that another path remains for him. Arhin realizes that if it was impossible in his current state, that means someday he will be able to handle the power. He asks if in other words he should start with a sword he can handle. His eyes light up as he asks if he only needs to find one. Liam laughs and is impressed. He praises Arhin, saying he already has the intuition of a swordmaster. Liam advises that the more worn out and handled the sword, the better. He asks the boy to guide him to an area where old, shabby weapons are abundant. Arhin guides him to a wreckage site. Liam says he will pick one out for him. Arhin comments that the place is gloomy. He bets the necromancers would love it. He explains that all the old things from the slums are gathered here, from worthless scrap metal to unusable weapons. Liam observes the pile and states there is no more suitable place than this to seek a sword that meets his conditions. He says it is a good start. Liam reflects that in the beginning, he too used to devour swords in places where the smell of blood was thick. He recalls swords clutched by dead soldiers, axes caked in mud and blood, and spears with broken shafts rolling on the ground. Liam says he ate every weapon he could find with all his might to grow stronger and survive. He says somehow this place reminds him of those times. He explains that to guard the sparks of life, they clashed without end while increasingly getting fractured. Some died the same day while others lived to see tomorrow. Liam muses that those days themselves were a battlefield. In the midst of those struggles, countless lives are inevitably extinguished without a trace. And yet, a select few leave behind a dazzling single point of light. Amidst all the junk, a single sword shines with an intense golden light. Liam stares at the light with a determined look because he has found it. Pointing to the weapon, he tells Arhin to take that one. He declares that is the one he must devour, his second sword. 1 month later, the scene shifts to the mansion under the moonlight. A group of men approaches the location. One comments that it is fine, just like they heard the place is abandoned. He notes there is not a single presence here, not even in the village. One of them suggests maybe a warlock used this mansion to experiment on living beings before. Another doubts it, saying if that were the case, they would have died the moment they stepped foot in this place. They conclude it is probably a fallen noble hiding out here. They explore inside and note that it reeks of the smell of the rich. 2 of the men celebrate, thinking their luck has finally turned and the job will be a piece of cake. The skinny thief says if there isn't even a caretaker, then that says it all. He rummages through a room and exclaims that it looks like a noble's daughter really does live here. The bald thief holds up a dress. Amazed, there is a whole pile of fine ladies' clothes, freshly laundered. One of the intruders sniffs the cloth and comments that the scent is really different. The bald thief says that if they play their cards right, they might be able to have another kind of fun. He yells for the dress to be given to him, so he can get a sniff of that noble lady's scent too. But suddenly, Arhin appears from the dark doorway and tells them to stop. The thieves look shocked. Arhin steps forward and says his mother liked things to be tidy. He remarks that she truly hated it when her belongings were a mess. He orders them to quietly put that down and have a conversation. The bald thief asks what this is. He asks who this kid is and if he is the son of the mansion's owner. He clicks his tongue, disappointed it isn't a woman. Arhin asks if they came here to seek food or simply a place to stay. He demands that if it is one of the two, they should say it. He claims he is willing to accept them as guests if it is for one of those reasons. The bald thief asks what he is yapping about. He asks if the brat has lost his mind. He curses, saying these damn nobles must not have common sense. The large man walks forward with his weapon, looming over Arhin. He says Arhin should have just stayed hidden quietly. He shouts, asking why the hell he crawled out to make a fuss. He swings his weapon down, screaming and asking if Arhin is that eager to die. Arhin faces the blow with a confident smile as his eyes glow intensely. At that moment, a powerful fiery energy awakens from within him. Arhin easily dodges the attack. With a fluid motion, Arhin pierces the intruder with his blade. The bald man vomits blood, shocked. Arhin coldly states that so they were intruders, not guests. And with a cold look, Arhin adds that they were not invited to be there. The scene then takes us to a fireplace where a strong fire warms the entire room. The flames dance and illuminate the room, creating a much calmer atmosphere. In front of the fire, Arhin turns to his master with a question. He holds the new sword and asks Liam if this is really the sword he is supposed to eat. To Arhin, the weapon he is holding looks less like a sword and more like a needle. He thinks it feels like it would just snap if he tried to cut something with it. Liam states that is to be expected. He explains that it was never meant for slashing foes, nor is it for crushing them. Liam reveals that it is a weapon forged for a single purpose. In a decisive battle where life and death hang in the balance, it is meant for piercing through the enemy's vital points to end their life. It is a sword meant to thrust. Arhin notes it is only for thrusting. Liam comments that Arhin's face says he thinks a spear would be a better, sturdier, and more familiar option. He admits that question is not without merit. However, Liam explains that the memories dwelling within that sword are the most useful thing for Arhin's weak and fragile body. Liam informs Arhin that before the death of its previous owner, she single-handedly pierced the lives of over 2,000 enemies. He adds that she did so with a body even more slender than Arhin's, that of a woman. Therefore, he tells Arhin to treat that sword with the respect it deserves and consume it with gratitude. The weight of its sins may be light, but the life that dwells within is immeasurably heavy and solemn. Arhin places the weapon in the fire, preparing for the ritual once more. There is much for him to gain from inheriting that woman's memories. The last thing the child remembered was a burning mansion. When the girl, barely 10 years old, opened her eyes, many things had changed. Her parents had been reduced to ashes in the inferno, their forms unrecognizable. When she heard that she was the only one who barely managed to survive, the child whispered softly, "Mary wished she had died with them." After losing everything in an instant, the child came to live in an old orphanage. That place worshipped the goddess of fire. The day she learned it was a place that considered fire to be salvation, the child was dragged down to rock bottom once again. She, who had lost everything to fire, had to live in a place that saw fire as salvation. Looking in the mirror, she realized she still hadn't escaped the flames. The days that followed were horribly peaceful. The others wondered what was wrong with that side of her face. They heard it was because she was cursed by the goddess. They realized that face was a mark of the curse. They whispered that it was creepy and called her a monster. They found it disgusting and horrible. Mary wanted to die. Every day she prayed for death to come for her again. She wanted to escape the fire that consumed her face, the same fire she saw every time she closed her eyes. And she wanted to escape the fire of hatred that surrounded her when she opened them. Until that day came. Under the moonlight, she saw a man training. Looking back, his swordsmanship was nothing but rough and crude. But to her, it possessed a beauty more than enough to make her forget the hell that filled her mind. His name was Heckle. He was an old swordsman, a former wandering knight who had worked at this orphanage for a long time. Normally, to an old man with such a harsh face, she wouldn't have even dared to say a single word. But that night, Mary approached him. She asked how she could become like him. She stated she wanted to learn. She took her first step towards wanting to live. Heckle remained silent. He said this wouldn't be of much help in life, especially for a girl like her. He warned that a blade like this would only end up hurting her. He told her to please go back now. Mary insisted. She pleaded that if she can just learn that, no fire in this world would ever scare her again. Heckle took her to a barrel of swords. He told her to choose one here. He said if she can do so much as swing it, he will teach her. Mary looked at the swords. She asked if she just had to swing it. Heckle stood waiting. Mary reached out. She said as long as she can fight back, that is enough. She grabbed the thin, needle-like blade. The scene shows Mary pointing the weapon at Heckle, symbolizing the start of her training. The spot where the intruder was just pierced was the lungs. It is a place that can only be reached by precisely piercing between the ribs. Arhin reflects that someone like him, with absolutely no skill or experience with a sword, could never perform such a precise thrust. And yet, there is only one reason why it is possible. It is because of the owner of the needle he consumed a month ago. With that, the memories of Mary, the weapon's former owner, flood Arhin's mind. From there, he discovers that Heckle taught the young girl many things. He taught her how to stand straight and hold a sword, how to fight, and even how to survive. Even though it wasn't a formally established theory like in academies, Heckle's swordsmanship carried the romance and freedom he had gained while living as a wandering knight. And for a girl who once feared fire, it embodied a strength that was breathtakingly beautiful. It possessed a quiet toughness. Because of this, she called it Heckle's blade, and she truly loved it with all her heart. A few years later, Heckle laid in his sickbed. He told Mary the day would come when she must leave this place. He asked her that when that day comes, to please go out into the wider world. He said this is the last thing he leaves her, his final lesson. Mary wept, replying that she is glad that she is here at the end of his journey. She holds her master's hand, saying goodbye to him in his final moments. Alone in the room, Mary thanks him for everything and wishes her master can finally rest in peace. After that, just as Heckle had taught her, she left the orphanage and went out into the world. In a short time, the young woman made a name for herself as a fairly well-known mercenary. She wondered if it was perhaps because she used a peculiar sword, thin as a needle, or maybe because she was a young woman, a rarity in this line of work. Because of her unique skills to them, she was known as the sewing gypsy. Back in the present, Arhin understands what his master meant by digestion. Mary's memory flows into his mind and speaks to him. At that moment, the intruder on the ground begs the boy to spare his life just once. But Arhin ignores the plea. He grips his weapon firmly. The voice in his mind tells him to put an end to it cleanly. Arhin thrusts downward, finishing off the intruder without showing a hint of pity. Arhin notes that this is his first kill. However, despite it being the first time, he feels no emotion at all. All he can see is what remains before him, this situation. He reflects that just now, he was able to find an opening because that man underestimated him. But now, since he is outnumbered, he can't expect the same luck as before. Arhin wonders why they aren't charging at him when they have an advantage in numbers. He observes the thieves trembling. He realizes they are terrified. Liam Caravan laughs and says that is for good reason. He explains the movements Arhin just showed weren't something a beginner would do. The ancestor states that a moderate amount of fear helps one survive, but excessive fear clouds one's judgment. This fear makes the enemy before them seem larger than they really are and tricks them into thinking they are a much more powerful being. Liam says right now, in their eyes, Arhin is probably a murderous fiend skilled with the sword, its very embodiment. Arhin calmly accepts this reality. He decides that in that case now is the time. Arhin strikes the ground, launching his attack toward the other intruders. Immediately after, the boy charges forward quickly while the enemies are in shock from his action. Seeing him approach, one of the intruders screams desperately for him not to get any closer. Scared, the man swings his club at Arhin while shouting that he will kill him. Arhin easily dodges the enemy's blow, who curses at him in anger. With a confident smile on his face, Arhin prepares for his counterattack. Arhin slips past the first thief's guard. Arhin remembers the advice Heckle once gave him. The master said that as a woman not born with brute strength or stamina, time would never be on her side. Therefore, on the first, or at the second attack at the latest, she must pierce the enemy. Arhin lands a precise cut on the thief's torso. The intruder is in shock and lets out a groan of pain. Arhin recalls Heckle saying not to try to fill what you don't have, but make the ones you do have shine. In her past, Mary faced a strong opponent with a look full of determination. The girl's strengths were her natural flexibility and a body like a dancer's. From any posture, from any angle, she could attack. In an incredible acrobatic move, the young woman launches herself into a unique attack, closing in on her adversary who is in shock at the sight. In this way, she could aim for the enemy's life. The scene returns to the present. Arhin faces the last remaining intruder, the one who found the clothes. The man is paralyzed with fear upon seeing the young boy's impressive skill. Even holding a dagger, he trembles, unable to react. Terrified, the intruder wonders what the hell that thing in front of him is. He stares at the murderous fiend, wondering what he is. Under the light of the full moon, Arhin digs in the dirt. Liam appears and asks if Arhin will now cast away his doubt. The ancestor states that if you have the stamina to swing a sword all day without losing your breath, then 4 untrained thugs or opponents you can easily handle alone. Liam says that a caravan amidst a life-or-death battle only grows stronger. Arhin reflects that everything his master said was true. He notes that from his body becoming as flexible as a dancer's, as if reacting to the memories within the sword, to the memories of Mary becoming clearer as the fight began. Arhin now understands a little. He now understands what it was like for her to fight against the world. He asks if this is what his master spoke of. That you can grow stronger the more you understand your opponent, the power of digestion. Liam tells his young descendant that when it comes to the sword, he never lies. The ancestor promises him that his days ahead will be painful, a series of trials where he'd rather be dead. It will be so much that Arhin will feel like the hardship he faced today is a blessing. Liam asks even after hearing that, will Arhin still walk down this path? Arhin stands with his back to the spirit. He says if it means he can point his sword at that man Carlos's throat, then he will walk down it no matter the path. Arhin turns and calls for his master. He becomes confused and stammers, "Master." Liam is already far up the cliff face. Arhin stares in shock and asks if this is truly the right way. Arhin struggles to climb the rocky cliff face. Birds fly past as he clings to the side of the mountain. He looks up at the lone tree on the cliff edge. Arhin gasps and asks if he is serious. He pulls himself up the rocky surface, gritting his teeth. Liam sits casually on a ledge, watching him. He clicks his tongue and asks where the look in Arhin's eyes from last night went and asks has his doubt returned. Arhin glares and comments that is one of his strengths. Liam agrees that he has always been that way since he was young. Liam sighs that they will need to work on that trait of his at some point. Liam states that first, he will answer Arhin's question. He explains the path of a swordsman is broadly divided into 5 stages. At the beginning of the path, the sword beginner. Among them, those with talent reach the realm of sword walker. Those who establish themselves as strong and become the linchpin of the battlefield, the sword runner. The hero who can turn the tide of battle alone, the sword expert. And reigning above all other swordsmen, revered as a god itself, the state of achieving the mind sword, a swordmaster. Liam orders Arhin to answer him, young descendant. He asks among these where does Arhin think he belongs. Arhin says he is sure Liam wants a bold answer, but he knows his own level well. He explains that the prerequisite to becoming a swordmaster is wielding mana. And to wield mana, you need a vessel to store it, a second heart, the formation of a mana heart. Arhin says he hasn't formed a mana heart yet, so he believes he doesn't even qualify as a beginner. Liam laughs. He tells Arhin he is very self-aware. He confirms yes, Arhin hasn't even entered the path of the sword yet. He calls Arhin a novice among novices. He explains that this training is to guide a novice like him onto the path of a beginner, so that he can form a mana heart. Arhin is shocked. He yells asking what. He asks if Liam means he is going through all this risk right now just so he could form a mana heart in a place like this, where he could actually die. Arhin loses his grip for a moment. He argues that he doesn't know how it was in his master's time, but nowadays, you can just drink an alchemist's potion or have a walker-level knight infuse you with mana to awaken your senses, and you can form a mana heart. He complains that even noble ladies who have only learned swordsmanship for self-defense can easily form a mana heart. Arhin clutches the rock. He asks why they go off such an easy path and asks why they have to stick to this method. He says he just doesn't understand. Liam says yes, well it is as he says, the formation of a mana heart itself is not a difficult task. It wouldn't be impossible to just follow the norms. However, Liam states that the blood of us caravans is imbued with the unyielding power of steel. Therefore, to wield that mighty power, an equally tough vessel is needed. Liam declares an ordinary person's heart will not suffice, because the level one can reach with a human heart is merely the level of a human. He says if Arhin truly wishes to reach the level of a swordmaster, there is only one thing he must have, something that wouldn't be scratched even if it clashed with the world, a heart of steel. Liam explains there is only one way to forge it. To make Arhin's body feel the need of a mana heart on its own, he must endlessly push himself to the brink of death. Liam recalls that even among his descendants, very few have completed this training to the end. That is how painful and terrible the process is. However, those who endured it all the way to the end became swordmasters. Liam looks down the cliff. He asks how about it, young descendant. He asks if he is feeling a little motivated. Arhin clings to the rock, panting. Arhin smiles confidently. He shouts more than a little. Arhin declares the mana heart he will create will be different. Different from anyone else in this world. Liam laughs and says he does not lie when it comes to the sword descendant. The moon hangs over town. A caption reads Verde Region Eastern Village Campbell. In a tavern, a patron asks if they heard that rumor about the village to the west, caravan. Another replies he means that place where no one's been seen for a year and asks why ask about that creepy town. The first man says well, a rumor's been going around lately that there is something in that western village. His companion asks something. He asks what is it? The first man says how should he know? He adds whatever it is, it seems to be a dangerous being. He says all the ruffians who set foot there have never been heard from again. He continues that some rumors say a monster wave that the northern watchers missed swept through the village. He says others say necromancers experimenting with magic are stationed there. He admits there are all sorts of things being said, but they all come to one conclusion. If you don't want to die, don't enter the western village. A mysterious hooded figure sits at a nearby table listening silently. The man clenches a cup in his hand. He repeats the words, "A village where you'll die if you enter." He coughs violently, blood spattering into a handkerchief. The man wipes blood from his mouth. He says that place will be perfect.